Hi, it's Wednesday, October the 6th, and I continue to read and wonder my way through Matthew's Gospel. And today we're in Matthew chapter 27, verses 15 to 23. And you may recall that yesterday we heard about Jesus being questioned by Pilate and by the religious authorities. He answers, I guess, one of Pilate's questions. Um, are you the king of the Jews? You say that. But he refuses to play the game with the religious authorities. They ask questions and he remains silent. And that's where we pick it up today. So it's Matthew 27, 15 to 23. Now at that festival, the governor was accustomed to release a prisoner from the crowd, anyone whom they wanted. At that time, they had a notorious prisoner called Jesus Barabbas. So after they had gathered, Pilate said to them, "Whom do you want me to release for you? Jesus Barabbas or Jesus who is called the Messiah?" For he realized that it was out of jealousy that they'd handed him over. While he was sitting on the judgment seat, his wife sent word to him, "Have nothing to do with that innocent man, for today I have suffered a great deal because of a dream about him." Now the chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowds to ask for Barabbas and have Jesus killed. The governor again said to them, "Which of the two do you want me to release for you?" And they said, "Barabbas." Pilate said to them, "Then what should I do with Jesus who is called the Messiah?" And all of them said, "Let him be crucified." And then he asked, "Why? What evil has he done?" But they shouted all the more, "Let him be crucified." And there's the passage. And I am careful about this passage and other passage in this same kind of passage in other gospels, as it is a wonderful warrant for anti-Semitism. This passage is the kind of passage that is raised by those who feel that. That the Jews betrayed God, the Jews crucified Jesus, right? And in fact, Matthew kind of makes that happen when they say, "Let him be crucified." But there's a lot going on in this passage, and I would say, one, they're referred to as the crowd. Matthew doesn't identify them as a Jewish crowd. Yes, it is a Jewish gathering, as it were, but it is the crowd. So let's acknowledge that, because I think that's significant. I think there's a couple things going on in the story that suggest that there is a creative intent more than a journalistic intent. I'll get right to it. It's that line, where are we? Whom do you want me to release for you, Jesus, Barabbas, or Jesus who's called the Messiah? For he realized that it was out of jealousy that they had handed him over. So Matthew, or whoever writes this gospel, we'll call them Matthew, Matthew knows what's going on inside of Pilate's mind. He knows what Pilate's motivation is. How could he know that? Unless Pilate told him. But that seems very unlikely. However, the author has put together a picture and imagines that what Pilate is doing, he is doing because he's aware that the high priest and the elders are out to get Jesus, that they're jealous of him. It's not a peculiar conclusion to jump to, but it is not evident by simply watching. A journalist couldn't say that without having talked to Pilate and having Pilate confirm it. So when we look at this as a piece of journalism, we go, look, there you go. You see, look at that. The Jews, obviously, they're the ones that crucified Jesus. Well, no, because ultimately it will be the Roman authorities who do it. It is a Roman decision to do it. And Matthew refers to the crowd. Doesn't call them the Jews. Calls them the crowd. And we've already established that this passage is very creative. This is something that Matthew has written for effect. Now, it may be based on a historical event, but it's creative. And so I think Matthew refers to the crowd for a very good reason, because the crowd is all of us. Coming up to this moment, we've heard some of the minor characters, as it were, become the focus. And we're going to hear a little more of that in passages to follow. So, I mean, we've heard from Peter and we've heard from Judas, who really are minor characters while all this is going on. Jesus is basically just the center of the events, but we're focusing on what's going on with Judas, what's going on with Peter, what's going on with Caiaphas. Now we're also what's going on with the crowd, because there is an invitation, I believe, for each of us to see ourselves in Caiaphas, to see ourselves in Judas, to see ourselves in Peter, to see ourselves in the crowd. So I think that's significant and important. And when I see myself, well, I can see myself in Pilate. Let's start there. So with Pilate, there are signs all around him that this is the wrong thing to do. He knows others doing it out of jealousy, according to Matthew. His wife knows because of a dream, a supernatural sense, that this is the wrong thing to do. So what is it that could convince him to do another thing? But obviously nothing. He knows what's going on. His wife knows supernaturally what's going on, and yet he is still going down the path to crucify Jesus. Why won't he get off the path? Why won't he change direction? And that's where I have some appreciation for Pilate. Those times in my life when I have been going down a path and I know that it's wrong, but I don't get off of it. There are signs all around me that this is wrong, but I don't get off of it. Why? And this, for me, is an invitation for me to recognize those times and ask myself again in hindsight, why didn't I get off the path when I could have gotten off the path? Even though the universe seemed to be screaming at me, don't do that, Norm. Why did I do it? And sometimes I did it because I lacked the courage to do the right thing. Sometimes I did it because I didn't want to disappoint people. And so I went ahead and did the wrong thing so I didn't disappoint them. Sometimes I did it out of craven self-interest. It made me richer, happier, whatever that may be. And no, I'm not going to give you specifics. But I think we can imagine, and Matthew's imagined a lot about Pilate. I can imagine Pilate is the governor. So he is the Roman representative, but he's responsible to Caesar ultimately, and he wants to keep the peace. He wants to stay looking like a tough guy. Historically, we understand Pilate crucified a lot of people. He was not a lovable individual. He ruled by fear. So he wants to keep that image. So he knows it's the wrong thing, but he is not going to give up his image. He's not going to give up the way that he does things. He is not going to disappoint Rome. And that's when I have a little sympathy for Pilate. I don't want to disappoint people. I don't want to give up my edge. I don't want to look like something that runs counter to what I'm telling people I am. You know, I don't want to ask the question that's going to make me look stupid, because I think I like people to think that I'm smart. I have a little sympathy for Pilate. Not that I have ever crucified anybody, but I don't think Matthew is just thinking about the crucifixion or the historical event of Jesus' condemnation, but in fact is inviting us to wonder about what's going on with Pilate and what goes on with us when we are taking a similar path. And if I can say that about Pilate, I can say the same thing about the crowd. It's a great line. Who should we release? Well, we'll have Jesus Barabbas released, okay? And we've been told that Barabbas is notorious. Okay, so they know who he is. So there's no confusion. I've heard it suggested sometimes that, well, Jesus Barabbas, Jesus of Nazareth, maybe they just got confused. No, Jesus Barabbas is notorious. So we know who he is. Okay, and we're going to let him go. So we're very intentional about that. And we scream out for him, let him go. Okay, what about the other? Then crucify him. Um, and that's where I love the language. So, what should I do with Jesus who is called the Messiah? Pilate says to them, and all of them said, let him be crucified. Why? What evil has he done? Again, a peculiar question for the governor to ask. What evil has he done? What treason has he committed? What insurrection is he part of? What evil? That's an interesting moral question. But anyway, and they answer back again, let him be crucified. Let him, as if they're not involved. And that, again, is an invitation for me not to just understand Pilate. I've done that, but now looking at the crowd and ask myself, how often do I let things happen as if I'm not involved? When in fact, of course, I am involved. Let him be crucified, they say, as if, well, so when he's crucified, it wasn't up to us. Yes, but it is up to you. You actually have a part to play in this. And by abdicating with your words, you are playing that part. You are condemning. I know we've heard a lot in the last while about how silence is violence when talking about racism. If you don't speak up, you are complicit. You are part of the violence being done. Silence is violence. Well, here it is. They're not silent, but their language would indicate that they're not taking responsibility. But in fact, they are responsible. So that's an invitation for me to think about the crowd, which is why I like the crowd being described in very broad terms. So no matter who I am, excuse me, so no matter who I am as I read this story, and appreciate that by the time Matthew's gospel is a thing that you can read aloud or hold in your hand, Christianity has moved beyond being just for Jews. It's not just a Jewish reform movement now. The God-fearers, the Gentiles, they're now all part of this. It is spreading through the empire. And so when I hear about the crowd, I am allowed or invited to think about, okay, so what am I? I'm part of the crowd. When have I said, let this thing happen, as if I have no power, no part to play? This calling them the crowd moves us out of that moment in the history of Jerusalem into the fullness of the whole empire, of the spreading of Christianity. So I can hear this if I'm a Gentile and it's about me. I can hear this if I'm a 21st century person and it's still about me. How often have I said, let things happen, as if I'm not involved? Racism. Well, that's not about me. I'm not a racist. I have friends of all sorts of different ethnicities and everything, so I can't possibly be racist. And yet, I benefit from a system that is based on racism. And yet I go, well, that's not really my battle. I'm sorry that those folks are having trouble with the police, but they probably shouldn't be speeding. They probably shouldn't be in strange neighborhoods. That's not me. I'm in my neighborhood and I didn't speed. So I don't let that go. That's the letting. Let them be crucified, the crowd says. And I go, well, let them be prosecuted. Let them be persecuted. Let them be treated unfairly. Let racism not only survive but thrive. Or colonialism, or hatred, or poverty, or bullying. You bully somebody that I love, I'm going to speak up. But you bully somebody I don't know, well, that's probably for their family to take care of. I'm sure someone will speak up for them. Somebody will advocate for that person. It's not going to have to be me. No. Let them sort it out themselves. As if I have no part to play in a society that is not healthy. For me, Matthew has really invited me into this by calling me the crowd and by taking this out of time, because this is to me is so creative. He knows what Pilate's thinking, even though he can't. He refers to the crowd, meaning to me that's all of us. We've taken this out of a moment of history, and we're really meant to look at When bad things are happening, when a system is sick, who is responsible? Not who caused it, but who has the power, the ability to make it better. The crowd did not arrest Jesus. The crowd did not mock him and spit on him and slap him and call him names. The crowd did not do that. So they're not responsible for Jesus coming before Pilate. I got it. And yet they have the power to fix it. They could make it better. They could cry to have Jesus of Nazareth, Jesus who calls himself the Messiah. They could call to have him released, and they do not. And they would go home that night saying, has nothing to do with us, we didn't do that. And yet, they have the power to make it better. I find very often that what I want to do, and what people around me seem to do an awful lot, is say, well, I didn't cause it, it's not my fault. It's not the question. Are you letting it continue? What evil has he done? Let him be crucified, they called. I find this to be a very pointed passage. And maybe that's me. Or maybe that means something to you. I don't know. Or maybe there's something else going on in this passage for you, and I'm just so focused on that at the moment because it speaks to me that I'm missing some other great things going on. In fact, I'm sure I am. But I'm going to leave you with those other great things for you to consider. And I really do hope you have a chance to do that today. I do hope you'll wonder about this as the day unfolds and think about it. And imagine what goes on, what would be going on in your mind if you were Pilate? What would you be thinking if you were in the crowd? How would that feel? How would you feel if you were the chief priests and the chief priest and the elders questioning Jesus, who is basically not taking your bait, not playing your game anymore at all? You have become superfluous. I mean, when you think about it in the story, the high priest and the elders, they have lost all of their power at this point. They're questioning Jesus. Jesus doesn't answer them. You know who has the power? The crowd. Yeah, there's some neat stuff going on here. Matthew has put together a beautiful passage. But I'm going to stop now and offer a prayer. So let us pray. Loving God, we thank you for the stories that peer into our lives and invite us to look at ourselves in new ways. Even as we look at ourselves and can be disappointed, God, let us remember that you see us and that you love us. You inspire us to do better, to live more fully, to live more compassionately. And yet you also understand that sometimes it is difficult. Sometimes it seems almost impossible. We thank you for your loving consideration of who we are and how and why we do things. We thank you even more for your inspiration to be aware. We thank you for the strength, the courage that you offer us when we open ourselves to you. God, we ask that all that we have engaged today stay with us, grow within us, and may it bring us closer to you. We pray through the Holy Spirit in Jesus' name. Amen. And that'll be it for me today, but I hope that you have a wonderful day of thinking, of growing, of doing. And I hope that you know that you are not alone. In all that you do, you are blessed. God sees you. God's love moves through you. You matter a great deal. God bless you. See you tomorrow.